Hello and welcome back to my channel. I just recorded a whole episode and realized I didn't have my mic plugged in. So I'm back doing it all over again. I'm a little bit gutted, but all I can do is vow to myself to make this recording even better for you, for myself, to put myself at peace, because that I believed was very good. So pressure's on. Okay, so today's episode is the first of a new series in which I'm going to be taking you on a journey through the photographic archives as well as into myself and into my soul to talk to you about certain photographs that have been a significant part of my creative journey so far. So this mini project is building up to my first large national exhibition that will be held in Oriel Plas Glynneweddw in Llanbedrog this year. It runs between May the 11th and July the 6th, so it's 7 weeks. It runs for 7 weeks and it showcases over 20 photographs as well as some excerpts from pieces of writing that give greater context around the thoughts, philosophies, and some of the themes surrounding my work. So you're welcome to come along. I'll leave all of the information down in the description below, and I'd love to meet some of you there. So stay tuned for opening times, dates, and dates that I'll be there at the exhibition if you want to meet me and have some conversations around creativity, photography, nature, the self, and all of that kind of thing. Okay. Without blabbering too much, the first photograph that I'm going to discuss as part of this series is one titled Limelight. It is a photograph that has performed very well in a competition last year in the Natural Landscape Photography Awards. It came, I think, in the top 10% in the world. Something around that mark anyway. Not that competitions matter, of course. Good for the ego, but, you know, not so much importance for the soul, which is where I want to talk from about this photograph today, because this photograph actually has real depth and meaning behind it and real significance in my own creative, spiritual journey so far. So let me take you right back to the beginning of that journey, which now actually is quite significant because it's 7 years since I began creating for the world. And no, trees aren't where I started actually. This has been a whole evolutionary process to get to this point here, and you know, beyond now. This was taken 4 years ago, so lots has happened in that time. But I began by picking up my mobile phone and taking a picture of myself back in 2018. So I started to tell the story of myself, of my own transformation, a physical transformation. So I began taking pictures of my biceps and videos of me lifting weights and working out and grimacing and tensing and making progress and sometimes making regress. And I wanted to tell the story of myself. That's how my creative journey began. And that's, I mean, still conceptually in there in photographs like this. So for 18 months, I took photographs of my physique transformation and told the story of me growing and turning my pain into power, turning my heartbreak into beauty. So that's how my journey began. It evolved into me then taking the physique, taking the self, the person that I'd built, into the natural world a couple of years later. So I went for a walk to a nearby waterfall, one of the first walks that I took into nature, and I began pointing the camera then outwardly, as well as still taking some self-portraits to kind of carry on that storytelling aspect of, you know, me in the natural world. But it quickly evolved beyond me taking pictures of myself into me taking pictures of nature itself, and has since evolved in many different ways and different avenues until I eventually found myself creating photographs of trees, which in many ways are still representational of myself, because in a recent essay that I wrote and published to my website titled "A Bridge Between Two Worlds," I liken the camera to that bridge between the inner world and the world outside. So the camera really connects me to nature, and the eyes are, of course, the window to the soul. So by putting that camera to my eye, I have kind of articulated somehow that I'm connecting souls. My inner soul is connecting with the outer soul of nature on a kind of spiritual level. So this photograph is as much a photograph of myself as it is a photograph of a tree. So I'll get into more about what this photograph means on a kind of personal story level a little bit later on. But firstly, I feel it's necessary to tell you a little bit of a story about further evolution as a photographer and how I came to create photographs of trees that appear to be dancing on a stage, with the kind of light from the sun creating this limelight effect. So this photograph is titled Limelight for that reason. This is a stage, but I'll get more into that a little bit later. So contextually, to give you some context, back in 2020, on Boxing Day of 2020, my nan came over for Christmas dinner at my mum's house, and after we'd eaten, I invited her over to sit next to me as I'm editing away on the computer and going through the archives to look at photographs that I'd created during a visit to the Lake District in Scotland that I'd taken just a few months before. So on that trip to Scotland, I'd been very focused actually on a more technical and practical, boring really, approach to photography. So I'd really been interested in learning a lot about the rule of thirds and leading lines, and the compositional rules, and I was fascinated by how to work this camera. So I'd been to places and I'd documented photographs of places, focus more on the science, the logic, the rational thought and understanding of how to figure these buttons out to make this camera work. So I'd showed my nan at the time a photograph of Ashness Bridge, which is a place in the Lake District, a well photographed place in the Lake District where you can almost plant your tripod down in 3 holes and take a photograph, which I did. And upon showing my nan this photograph of Ashness Bridge, which is beautiful, by the way, if you've never been, I'd highly recommend it. It is a absolutely beautiful scene and well worth photographing and well worth practicing, your apertures and shutter speeds and all of that kind of technical stuff. But anyway, I'd shown my nan this picture of a place, and she started to tell me about this story that she was seeing unfold in her mind's eye. So she had her eyes closed and she was talking to me about this family that she could see that were playing down by the stream, and one of the children was kind of running away with the stream and another one was, kneeling down and playing with the water, and there were, parents around there somewhere as well. And I kind of, took a look at my nan, and I was just in this place of, almost confusion as to what she was doing, looking at a photograph and imagining like this. It seemed nonsensical to me to allow my imagination to run away with me like that. I was so focused on it being a thing and a place, and I was kind of fixed in what it was. So I then took her on a journey up to Scotland, and I'd taken her to the Old Man of Storr, which, again, if you haven't been, it's another place that is well worth visiting. They are gigantic rock structures that kind of protrude out of the ground, and if you could see the scale of a man next to this, huge structure that comes out of the ground, I mean, it is mind-blowing. And geologically fascinating as well. But again, very boring when I think about it compared to what my nan saw in that photograph. So whilst I'm getting lost telling her about the settings and the place, she stops me and she says, "Don't you see the faces in the rocks?" And I kind of stopped and looked at my nan a little bit, maybe thinking she's been, smoking something a little bit funny on Boxing Day, and her, she's got lost in her mind. But no, I zoomed into the photograph, and lo and behold, there was a face there in the rocks, 2 eyes, a nose, and a little cheeky smile. So as I've zoomed in, my nan then says, "Don't you see the other face there?" She said, "It's a man and a woman. They're in love." And again, I'm kind of like a little bit, wow, and lo and behold, there it was, man and a woman. And, I kind of, in the moment, I hadn't quite thought about it so deeply as I did afterwards. I was very kind of touched by the fact that my nan was telling me stories of what she was seeing. And I was kind of wowed by the fact that there isn't just one way of seeing, firstly, there's two stories. No photograph is the same between two people. So who am I to say that my nan was wrong in what she was seeing? And, she's not to say I'm wrong for what I'm seeing. There are many ways to see the world. So I was fascinated by that concept. And then also I was kind of intrigued by the place that my grandma was in at this point in her life. So a few years prior to this, I'd lost my granddad. So her partner had left the world and she was alone, and I could kind of tell that my nan had psychologically altered since the passing of my granddad, and I kind of had this suspicion that she knew her own ending of life was approaching. She was in her mid-80s and wasn't the same as she had once been. So it kind of fascinated me, the place that she'd gone to psychologically, where maybe she'd returned to the childlike version of herself, and started to engage in more imagination and wonder, maybe just to keep herself sane in her older age. So I really asked myself the question, we begin life as children in these beautiful, imaginative kind of places of awe and wonder, and we dream and we imagine and we explore and we're curious and we ask questions and we don't judge and we're not fixed and rigid. And then we end our lives clearly in the way that my nan was, in the same state of mind, where she was imagining and she was allowing herself to dream and wonder and engage in storytelling again. And I thought, what the hell is this period in between? What is happening in my life where I'm so fixated on money, on understanding, on logic, on rational thought, on things, on techniques, on places? And I kind of thought it's time to perhaps have a little bit more fun with photography, albeit this kind of happened subconsciously. But I noticed after 3 months, Limelight emerged, and this was created 2 months after a photograph called First Dance, which is foundational actually in my portfolio as a photograph that marks a real turning point. But this stands alongside it really as another photograph where I'm telling a story of a tree on stage in the light, with an audience behind it. So my photography, thanks to my nan, began to evolve. Well, actually evolved very quickly, and I can see a significant change in the kind of photographs that I'm creating throughout 2021. So it stands to serve as a bit of a reminder for me to always remain open to people, to the wisdom that is trying to enter through the source of other people in life, because my nan really has played a huge part in my own evolution as an artist now, to become more of a storyteller and to become an artist. It was something I was very uncomfortable with calling myself for a long time, but this year 2021 really stood as a foundational year for me to give me the confidence to begin talking more artistically and philosophically about my work. So to talk a little bit more now about Limelight as an individual photograph rather than contextually kind of cover my evolution as a photographer so far. This photograph actually tells a story of myself, because back in 2021, at the beginning of 2021, I just embarked upon my own path as an artist. I'd handed my notice in from the soul-sucking corporate job that I was working before I ventured along this path, and I was alone. I was out in the world alone, and I was very much standing on my own stage at the time of creating this. So I saw myself as the tree on this stage with the light shining down on me over here. And, you know, I had my audience behind. I had my audience of social media followers and website viewers, and audience of people who had begun to recognize me in town as the photographer based upon things I'd put out online. So this photograph really represents me in as much as it tells the story of a tree. What it also tells is a deeper story of nature and what nature actually means to me. So if you've been following my journey for a while, you'll know that I actually grew up without my father in my life. So for 30 years, I hadn't seen my father. I actually learnt recently that he's now passed away. So it's something I'm not ever going to get to do now. So as much as we talk about Mother Nature, to me, there is also Father Nature. There is Mother Nature, but also Father Nature. So trees like this one actually act for me as a father, as a wise old father. So from my own experience, I've actually ventured outdoors into the world of nature to find places that offer me a sense of stillness, a sense of peace, because it is in these places, when the world falls silent, my mind falls silent, that I can access the wisdom and the guidance that is innate inside of all of us as human beings. So it is my belief that photographs like Limelight and the stories that come along with that would not be possible without this kind of deep connection that I have with the natural world, and the relationship that I've developed with trees like this one as a result of the absence of a father in my own life. The importance of nature for the human being psychologically and spiritually, I believe, is often overlooked, and it's why I love to open up and to talk about my own story, in the hope that it can shine some more light, let's say, on our own perhaps limitations as human beings, and our own, the areas where we don't understand perhaps what nature can do. So with all of that in mind, perhaps you'd like to take a moment to go now and reflect upon maybe this photograph and maybe some of your own photographs of nature, to find out what actually it means to you. What does it mean to you to be out in nature, and why do you go out and create? I actually hope by talking in this way that I can inspire some deeper thought and perhaps some deeper connections between yourself and your own subjects. So by opening up and sharing my story, I hope that it kind of inspires you to dig a little bit deeper inside of your own story and to find out why you engage with creativity and engage with nature. I would be very grateful if you were to drop down in the comments and share some of your thoughts, maybe some of the conclusions that you've come to with your own introspection and your own reflection. Alternatively, you can join my closed Facebook group, which is growing nicely, growing very steadily now. I have around 50 members in there, and it's become a place of engagement, a place where there's some open conversation about creativity and about photography and about nature, and as a whole. So if you're interested in taking a more introspective approach to photography, then perhaps you'd like to join that, for which I'll leave a link down in the description below. If you've been interested in hearing stories about Limelight and stories about my own creative journey, then I'd like to invite you to head over to, firstly, my Substack profile, where I publish lots of pieces of writing, and I actually have a piece all about Limelight over on there. If you don't have Substack, then I'll leave a link to my website journal, where I also share pieces of writing. If you've enjoyed looking at the photograph and hearing my thoughts, then perhaps you'd like to come along to the exhibition that is being held at Oriel Plas Glynneweddw between May this year and July. The exact dates, May the 11th until July the 6th, and all of the opening times will be linked down below in the description, where I've set up a page on my website to disclose information like that, as well as key dates throughout the exhibition, such as things like artists' talks and other key dates as well. Once again, thank you for tuning in and for offering your support. And I would love it if you could hit the like button, at least on this video. I noticed over the past couple that less than 10% of you have pressed like, and it would help me out no end if you were to do that on this video, as I look to grow my channel and share my messages and this wisdom with the world. Thank you once again for tuning in, and I'm looking forward to bringing you more videos in the future.